application architecture mechanism is basically your, and which is the most important chapter considering today's age or today's era, is the REST API. Now, we have seen that the SOAP, we have seen WSDL, we have seen the limitation of SOAP, the performance things of SOAP. But one thing you must have to share, that SOAP basically works into the format of the XML structures, right? SOAP can work with the other messaging structure, but the primary things for SOAP is basically XML. The XML basically is the main root thing of SOAP to work. If you consider this particular request, everything here is based upon your XML. Isn't it XML tag? Can't you, I mean, you can see that, right? So everything is on XML structure basis. So this is the starting tag, this is the ending tag. So the message basically is transforming across two or more systems with the help of XML, okay? And while working with XML, you must notice that this XML, isn't it a little bit heavier? Isn't it a little bit bulky? You do have to take care of many things. I mean, many tags, SOAP envelope, SOAP header, and SOAP body. In today's age, where we want some fast response, right? And if we operate with this type of bulky file details, don't you think that it would automatically degrade your performance? That's where the REST API comes into the picture as a savior, okay? It will save your time. It will generate the performance in a good fashion or in a better fashion than your SOAP. But the problem with the REST API is that, yes, it cannot handle a very large details. Suppose you have to process some 90 fields, right? You have to process something like origin, I mean, case origin, case description, case subject, like that. Suppose you have to handle some 90 fields tags. Does REST API is suitable? No. Does REST API will give all the flexibility? No, because you cannot handle all those things. That time you may have to use the SOAP, or you may have to use the batch, okay, if it is a large number of records. But if it is various or many fields, instead of 3 or instead of a limited number of fields, that time the REST is also not a good choice. Always go for SOAP when you have to deal with many details of a particular object or many details from many object, okay? So, but as we do not want, suppose I'll give you an example. I'm just operating a mobile phone. I'm just opening a particular Amazon app. I'm just opening a Flipkart app. What are the details I am sending? All I am sending basically the cut details, the order details, that what are the items I would like to purchase, and that's the details I would like to I would like to add those product into my cart. And once I have added those product into my cart, I am just sending my credit card details. How many details we are going to send over here? Just only credit card number, credit card CVV number, the expiry date, and that's it. And there I'll be getting an OTP, right? So only the 3 fields. In this case, all I bother about how fast I can do, how fast I can complete my transactions. So that's where basically the REST is coming into the picture and saving the entire game. That is the reason in today's world, whenever we would be operating with a limited number of fields, with a limited number of field values, we will be always going through the REST API. Take an example of our particular mobile, right? That's what I was talking about. Just you log in. Once you log in into Amazon app, you are just giving your details. What is your user ID? What is your password? Then you are just hitting the Amazon server or the banking server. Let's assume if you are using the HDFC Bank apps or the Axis Bank app. All you are doing, you are just writing your MPIN, mobile PIN, or you are writing your user ID or password. once you are writing, you are just hitting the login button, right, in the Axis Bank. And then once the login button has been pressed inside your app, it is directly going to the Axis Bank server. It is authenticating and giving you a success response. One, it is giving a success response, you are successfully able to log in, right? So the rest basically is a representative straight transfer mechanism, which mechanism basically use the JSON format or the XML format of data. When we saw that basically the XML or SOAP, the SOAP is all about your XML. But when it is REST, that time the data would be transferred through JSON format and XML format, both. So what does look at JSON, right? So if you, JSON is a very much plain text English, okay? So suppose if you want to send some details like a product, right? So what you have to write down, so just give a bracket, okay? Inside the bracket, give a colon and then give product name, okay? And close that and then give a colon and then give the particular name, okay? Product name is HDFC, right? Simple, like that. Then your username, okay? So just like that, username, you give colon and then you just give the username is this, right? And similarly, so similarly, you give some password, okay? So when you be writing the password, colon over here, then just so just like this, okay? So then if you give password over here, then you just close this password, this, and give a, okay? So just close that and that's all, right? So this is the JSON format structure, which is rapidly or which is mainly used for any type of REST integration, okay? And this particular format is very much lightweight. Don't you think that it is a very much lightweight, okay? Just only that particular field name, that particular field value. You do not need the other details. You do not need the SOAP header information, body information, envelope information. I do not care. I just need what I want to send. That's it. So this is the reason basically we use the REST. Now, what are the principles of the REST API? One is your client server. You must have understood that what is the client server. So whatever I am operating from my web browser and hitting into the Axis Bank server. So from my web browser, always basically I am accessing the client and hitting the Axis Bank server, that is the server. Then the stateless, right? So I do not need a particular stateful things, right? So everything basically, I do not care that whether the connection, just like I was caring about the session ID and all those stuff over here, I do not need all those stuff over here, right? So that is the reason I do not care that what is the session ID, does my session ID is all valid or not. In REST API, remember, it is always stateless. You do not care about the session information. You do not care about that particular authentication contract, which is you caring about the SOAP WSDL and SOAP mechanism. Then cacheable, okay, once you just connect the REST API, it is always stored into your cache so that your connection always established and the connection will not broke, okay? Then the uniform resource identifier. What is uniform resource identifier, right? So for REST API, what you have to do, you have to hit a particular URL. Even for SOAP also, you must have to hit to a particular URL, right? But what happened for SOAP Apex class, if you see the SOAP Apex class, this particular URL will get changed when you will be changing the Apex class. So from SOAP API, basically, you can change to the other Apex class, right? So this is also actually works with the uniform resource identifier mechanism. The similar way, when you would be operating or you would be working with a REST class or the REST API, that would be always the uniform URI or uniform URL. The URL will be always constant. Then the layered system means there are various type of integrations one by one. So as I gave the Howrah Station example from IRCTC, I mean, when you tap the card or when you purchase a card from that particular point, it will go to your banking system. So it's basically all layered. It's basically multiple layer of integration which you are hitting. Okay. Now, the main 5 methods of your REST API. How do you operate? And remember, when I am talking about this particular REST API, I am mainly focusing about the inbound integration for time being. Okay, forget about outbound integration where we would be trying to hit the external system from our Salesforce system for time being. Just concentrate about the inbound integration through the REST API. So in this case, what will happen? Salesforce is hosting. Salesforce is basically publishing. I mean, Salesforce is giving you that particular mechanism where the external system can invoke the Salesforce and give the proper request to Salesforce. And how Salesforce basically manage those particular external system requests if Salesforce is using REST API with these 5 methods. One is GET, which is nothing but to query the details or get the details from Salesforce object details. Then it comes to POST. POST is nothing but the insert a new record. Simple, just insert a new record. Then if it is PUT, okay, so PUT is basically kind of upsert. Upsert means if the record is doesn't exist, then it will exist. I mean, it will insert. If the record exists, then it will update the same record. Upsert means insert plus update. So that's where basically PUT actually gives you that flexibility. Delete, you know, I do not have to discuss about that. And patch, okay, patch is only for update. Okay. So these are the 5 methods which you have to remember, which whenever you would be using the REST API. Now, I will just go to the benefits once. That's what I've already discussed. One is this is lightweight because it is JSON based, XML based. You can ignore for time being, but mainly it is a JSON based. That is the reason it is a lightweight, smaller, and consume less bandwidth. That's what I was talking about, 5 or 6 fields. Only I would like to send to HDFC Bank and I would like to get the response, right? Then high performing, obviously, if it is a smaller structure and if it is a JSON structure where I do not have to care many more things, it would be always high performing, okay? And efficient and fast and scalable, okay? So these are the basically benefits of the Apex REST API. Now going back to the formal integration section, your question should be how we can do all these REST things inside your Salesforce. Let's assume I am into my Salesforce org, and what I did, give me a second, let me see that whether my org is good. Yeah. So let's assume that in my org, what I did, I actually created some products, okay? Some products. This products actually based upon a particular custom object. The custom object name is product underscore underscore sheet. So this under this particular custom object, I have, so let's go to setup and let's go to object manager, and inside the object manager you just go to product. Okay, so let's see that what is the structure. Okay, so this is the product underscore underscore c which I have created. Okay, if you see here, I have created some fields inside that. Okay, one is your product name. Okay, the second is the unit price. Okay, and third is the vendor. Okay, and what is vendor? Vendor is a lookup. So lookup to another object. Okay, so if you go to vendor, so vendor has nothing but the vendor name only. Hope all clear. I have two objects, one is product, one is vendor, and the product has a vendor lookup. That's all. After this particular things I did, then what I have done, I have created some of the products inside my org. I have come across over here, and I have sorry, not this particular products. This is a Salesforce standard product. Okay, So if you go over here and if you just click on 9 dots, here you can see the products. Okay. Okay. So here all products. The first one, I think. I'm sorry. See here. So this is the product details which I have created through the external system. Now your question should be how I have created. How I have created. Okay. So let's go to the Apex class. Okay. So to do that, basically I have created one Apex REST class. The REST class, Apex REST class name is product API. Okay. Now, whenever you will be defining any Apex class as a REST class, remember one thing, first thing you have to do, add the REST resource. This is the inbuilt notation you have to use with your eyes closed. Okay. Close your eyes and first write down this particular thing. Okay. Whenever you are trying to write down an Apex REST class, and then you close your eyes, write down this URL mapping equal to, and then you just write down that what is the name you would like to give. So in this case, I have given the name is product. Okay. And before that, I have to give a version v1. I have given a version called v1. So your question should be that if I will use a Salesforce different version and all those, but we will park that question aside. Let's go through the basic of the REST API now. Okay. Remember REST resource, at the rate REST resource, then URL mapping equal to, then version, then the particular name of the REST class. And then similar way, how we have described, you just write down the global, okay, and with sharing and class product API. This is a simple generic class which I am declaring as with sharing, right? So with sharing means it will always use the users all permissions, right? So the user, whatever the object is accessible, the user is whatever it is, the field is accessible to the user, it will just always align with that. It will not align with the system details. So what happens, I have declared this class. Now what I want basically to retrieve the details from my Salesforce system. To do that, as I told you, that I would be using HTTP GET. Okay. So let's use this HTTP GET. Simple, just as simple, global static list product C. So this is the object name. I have defined it as a list, and I have used this particular get method. And give me a second. So it is giving an error 57 because I haven't commented this particular get. So let's just comment this particular get so that it will only just use this get. Remember one thing, so only one particular HTTP get you can use. Okay, so if you have several gets details, if you think that I would be using many HTTP get inside a class, you show the result. You already saw the result. It will cry, right? So to do that, what you have to do, use one HTTP get, okay, and use what you would like to return. That's it. What I am returning, select ID name from product C. That means, hey, Salesforce, give me all the product details which you have inside that particular object, which is there inside product C object. Okay. And now how I will test it? I can test with the help of Workbench. I can test with the help of a Postman. There are many tools available. Let's use Workbench for time being. Okay. So for to do that, you have to go to utilities and you have to go to the REST Explorer. Okay. I'm sorry because my session got timeout. Okay. So now I have opened my Workbench and I went to utilities. I went to REST Explorer. After that, what I want to do, I want to get, right? So this is the method basically I would be using. And once I will try to use this particular method, then what I use, I have URL mapping as v1 product. Okay. Copy that. Simple, just v1 product, copy that, and you just give this particular information and paste it over here. Okay. Once you do that, just try to execute it and let's see what happens. Okay. So this basically actually errored out services. I think Apex REST is missing. Services Apex REST. Sorry, I'm sorry because the Apex REST got missed. So this is the in generic structure, guys. Services, then Apex REST, then you just put your V1 product, whatever is there, because your particular class has been defined as a REST class. This is an Apex REST class. You have to tell it that, hey, workbench, or hey, third party system, this is a REST class. And then you try to execute this. Give me a second. What happened? Services, Apex REST, V1 product. Get term select ID name. One product. This is Apex REST. Why it is not giving me the response and not showing anything? Login. Utilities, REST Explorer.
What happened?
Product.
So there's an
My session got invalid. I'm sorry, guys. Workbench, services, Apex REST, and developer console. Okay, so URL, services, Control S. Okay, so all good. So you can see over here, right? So Wagner, Lotus, Mainframe, Brisa, New Alto, everything basically it came when I tried to extract, or when I tried to get, right, all the values from my Salesforce org. I have requested through the workbench through this particular URL, and it gave me with the all response. Now, when instead of workbench, what basically when I would be integrating with some third party system, let's assume a banking application or a restaurant application, what I need to tell them, I need to tell them that this is the URL. This is all the URL. You just take this particular URL and hit us, okay? And you would be getting all the details. So now, once we have seen that, if suppose your question that hey, I am getting all the details basically when I am requesting the product. But what happen if I would like to request some specific details? Okay, so you just go and you modify this class, right? So instead of this particular method, instead of this particular method, if you have instead of this particular method where I am returning all this from product C, you try to use basically this particular ID, right? So if you use a particular ID of a product, what will happen? You would be getting that particular product from the target system. In my case, the target system is my Salesforce, because my source system is my workbench, right? So I am at workbench, and from workbench, what I want to get the details of this particular product. What I will be doing, just copy that and make sure that you have to have a valid product ID. How I can get a valid product ID? Let's go to this particular new Alto, and here you can see that this is the ID of this particular product. Once you take this particular product and go into the workbench, just type this particular ID. Let's assume that the third party system is hitting with this particular ID, and then you try to execute. See, this is the new Alto. That's what basically we have taken the ID, right? So this is how basically we can only request a particular record. And how we are doing that? So to do that, you have to use a specific type of details which you have under the HTTP GET. While you use the HTTP GET, your REST services, you have to use this particular REST context. Now your question should be, how I get REST context? REST context is the inbuilt mechanism of your HTTP GET. With this REST context, basically, or you not only your HTTP GET, it is applicable for all your REST classes. So with this REST context, I am just taking the request. So what I am doing, REST context dot request. That means whatever this particular context is there, I am taking the whole context with a dot notation, dot request. That means I got the whole structure over here once I got this particular REQ. After that, this REQ request URI dot substring, then I am doing the last index of this slash. Okay, so when I am doing this last index of this will go to the last index, the last slash where it is. So it will search that last index of this particular black slash, and then it is taking that +1. That means it is taking this particular ID. Okay, and once this particular ID has been extracted, this product ID will be stored over here. Once the product ID will be stored over here, then I will do that if string dot is blank. If it is blank, if I do not give anything, right? If I do not give anything and I hit it, that time it is giving me all the details. Sorry, why I don't know why it is not showing. So it will give me all the details, basically whatever is there, all the records, sorry. So all the records basically will show, but once I will try to give that particular ID, then this else loop will be executed and I will be receiving only this particular new Alto record, because it is satisfying this condition and returning this particular details. Let's go through and take some more example of this. Okay, hope I am able to clarify you people. Okay, in case you have any question, just stop me or you just ping into the chat. Now the third thing, okay, so suppose this particular details, suppose if you have, if you want that, suppose a product ID or the vendor ID, both you want to pass, right? Because I do have a relation between product and the vendor. If you see here, this product has a lookup of vendor, Suzuki, right? So, and I would like to get that particular details which has a Suzuki and the name is New Alto. How do I pass? To do that, either you can pass the similar fashion as I told earlier, do two double slash and in one slash put your product ID, in one slash put your vendor ID. First thing. Second thing is that if you tell that no, I do not care about this particular all this slash and all those stuff, okay, I do care that I will use some prod ID or I will use some vendor ID. Now if you want to do that, you have to write your code like that way. Okay, so if you would like to use this particular product ID or your vendor ID, you have to just declare that and you have to use that inside your class. Then only you just can use that and pass and get the details. So I can show you all these details one by one, but I do think that the time won't permit us, right, Dhanik?
Right. So just One of the our member has asked, can you please re-explain this part again from taking the ID? So basically, how the ID is taken from the URL screen, URL parameter. So just explain about the get parameter itself. Or the we just wrap up using the get method of the REST API. Then probably the next session we will catch up with other methods, right?
Yeah,
So
and
basically, you just explain how you will get the different parameter from the get method, basically from the URL.
correct, correct,
Okay.
correct. So I mean, if we do have some time, I do have all these methods, the post, and we do have your. So similarly, I think in the next session, I won't take much time. Another 15 minutes of my time, and I can show directly this particular post and patch method basically, which would be useful. And then we can go for the next session. But meanwhile, if you have any question, you can please go ahead and ask. So far, whatever we have clarified is, if that is good, you understood, or any question.
No question till now, I think.
All good.
Oh yes.
So I think I can, if we do not have any questions, so that what we can do, we can just pass this particular the next thing, right? So let me comment out this particular section, okay, and let's use this particular section, okay. So what happened over here, that I am using the same HTTP GET, and here I am using this particular product C object. Similarly, as I told, the REST context is always be used. Just close your eyes and use this, because you are capturing a request, and with that request you would be playing and you would be retrieving the details from your Salesforce, right? But here on one thing, right, you are getting the prod ID, the question which you asked, the prod ID, basically you would be getting, this is nothing but external system variable, okay. And similarly, the vendor ID you would be getting. So just use this particular URL where you would be giving this prod ID and you would be giving the vendor ID. Use this URL, Control C, go to your workbench and type it over here, okay. And just go to this particular new alto, just give this particular product ID over here, Control C, and come over here and give this particular product ID as like what has the new alto, and new alto is associated with Suzuki, right? So just go to Suzuki, and this particular Suzuki record, take the vendor ID and just stamp the same vendor ID over here, okay. So just take that, Control V, and try to execute that. Once you do that, yep, so you can see the new alto again, right? Similarly, if you just go and if you just type instead of let's just change it, let's just change that particular vendor ID, right? See, you won't get any record because the condition is failing over here. There is no record associated over here which will be satisfying this particular condition, okay, because your vendor ID doesn't exist, and that is the reason you are not getting a name and your response is completely blank, okay. You are not getting any response. So this prod ID and the vendor ID I have used into my URL as prod ID, the same string what I used into my code, the vendor ID, the same string I have used, same string over here and here, passing them the IDs, getting the details from my Salesforce, okay. Similarly, when the third party system would be using, they also will be using some prod XXID, triple XID, and I need to use that prod triple XID, okay. So that's how basically your HTTP GET method will work and give you the details. So that's it for my session with the HTTP GET. As of now, the post and path still pending. And if you do not have any question, you can wrap up.
Yeah, I think we have no questions, so I think we can wrap up today's session. Probably we will the next session we will have in a weekdays itself, because we can like we have a lot of session to complete the certification preparation. So we will basically get this session in weekdays. We will share all the detail in our Telegram group itself. So thank you guys for joining. And a lot of people actually not able to join our Zoom link. So probably might we have to recap the get method plus API method. Then we'll go with the.
Yep, yep, yep,
Okay.
yep.
Okay. Thank you very much,
Okay.
everyone.
Thanks,
Thank you
guys.
for your time.
Thanks for joining. Thanks for your valuable time, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.